Today's lesson is to animate cameras. All right, so first thing is turn on my screencast right here. I deleted all the cameras here, so we'll start from from scratch, sorry. And I just added this kind of cube right here, took out the top and the front. I added two area lights right there, kind of made them tiny strips mimicking fluorescent tubes, and put one here, two here also. So that's kind of like the lighting setup. I just added color. It's kind of to simulate maybe an arcade room, a home arcade room. Okay, so let's start with adding a camera. I'm going to go add and then click on camera. By default, you have a 50 mil focal length on the camera, and you can change this. We're probably going to be okay with the full shot with the 50 millimeter right here. And let's just set this up so that we could see that. So I'm going to press 0 on the numpad. All right, so this is what the camera is seeing. All right, so I will jump into the animation tab so that we could see what the camera sees over here. Press 0, okay, and then over here I'm going to go numpad. Let me turn on my screencast here. I'm going to go to the top right here, okay, just so that, there we go. So there's our camera right there. So if I pull the camera back, there we go, start seeing, this is the framing for the camera. All right, so I'm going to pull this back right here. So I want this kind of straight on facing the arcade right here. So I will open its transform right here, and then just pretty much just set this up for 0 for now. We'll zero it out. We're also going to zero out its rotation. Scale, we leave it alone, of course. Okay, so right here I'm going to pull it back, and it's facing down, so that would be the x-axis. So if I type in 90 degrees, you'll be looking at it like so. Okay, and I'm trying to look at the arcade. The arcade is not centered here, so let me kind of try and center that to the world. All right, so there we go. Arcade is now centered. Let's take a look. So I'm going to pull this back a bit. Okay, and then we might need to raise it so that it's framing the camera. 50, it's still fine right here. All right, so let's start with kind of like a full shot of the arcade unit, like so, centered, and we just want to animate the camera kind of getting close to it. Otherwise we want to, it's your typical portrait shot right now because you're aiming at the belly right here, or waistline. So we'll change that a bit by giving it a little headroom. Okay, and then when we get closer, we can start tilting maybe. Okay, or we'll need to give it a little bit of a down tilt. Maybe I'm going to go 85 degrees. Okay, and let's take a look here so that when we get close, all right, then we can move it up, show a little bit of the panel right there. All right, so let's start our first animation. Okay, we will just animate the y-axis and then some of the z-axis to kind of go up. We want to concentrate on the screen. All right, this one also has the animated background, which is part of the part 3 or part 4, I think, of the series. Okay. All right, there we go. So let me start with frame 1. Okay, it goes all the way to 2000, folks. That's the more than 2000 actually before the animation of the screen ends. So all right, so for this one, let's say we just want, and we're going to edit this. There'll be an editing portion of the tutorial, so we will actually render more than what we need a little bit so that we can actually learn editing. Okay, otherwise yeah, you basically edit whatever the frame range is, so you don't waste anything. Right, so we're going to move this forward like so. Okay, and then let's say that would take us, let's say 8 seconds, right? And then we'll also move this up a little bit like so, so it'll frame the screen. All right, so that's the plan. All right, so let's start. I'm gonna go to frame 1. Okay, right here, and then I'm gonna animate green or y-axis. All right, so right here on frame 1, right click the y-axis, insert single keyframe. Okay, and then we're going to let's say 200 frames. Okay, because we can always move it if it's too slow, okay, or too fast. All right, so 200 frames. We're gonna move it like so, so kind of like a close-up. Maybe that's way too close. Right there, maybe. Okay, and then I'm going to right-click here, insert single keyframe. All right, so now let's watch our animation. All right, so a nice smooth kind of movement. That'll work. Okay, so let's go back to our frame, our first keyframe. So just click on the down arrow, it jumps, and or up arrow, it just jumps to those keyframes, so you don't have to kind of find them here. All right, so we're animating the z-axis, right? So here on frame 1, we will animate z-axis as is. No movement, just what it is. We go to frame 200. All right, then we'll move up the z-axis so that we kind of frame the screen with the panel right here, a little bit of headroom, maybe a little bit more headroom. Then we right click z-axis. All right, there we go. All right, let's see it. Could be my computer kind of struggling. Let's see it in a better. And we're animating default 24 frames per second. All right, and I made sure that. Oops. Okay, so my first mistake here is my world right here is not wide enough. So let me just make that wider. There we go, so we don't see the end of the world. Okay, let's click on our camera. Let's watch that again. All right, so definitely we can edit that one. All right, so instead of using just one camera here, we're gonna do multiple cameras, and then I'll teach you how to do marking your timeline with the camera, so it automatically switches, so that when you're rendering, you don't have to keep kind of like you have a render queue, so you don't have to keep getting interrupted before to render different frames. Okay, so from 200 frames we add another camera, right? So we're going to add another camera. Okay, and remember last time we have some path that we can use where the camera can actually just kind of glide and follow along, right? So if you like to do, let's say, like a 360 or a half circle animation of this one, we can definitely do that. All right, so but for now we will make this camera kind of look at the arcade. All right, so that wherever we kind of position it, then we'll have that kind of different motion for it. All right, and in order to do that, we need to simply add an object constraint, all right, while the camera is selected, of course. Okay, we want to add an object constraint. We want a track to, so we want the camera to track to an object, right? But let's make sure first that I actually named this thing. All right, so let's call this one arcade, so that we know what we're actually tracking. Okay, all right, let's select the camera again. Okay, this is camera 2, so we have camera 1. All right, well, we'll rename them later so that you don't get confused over which one. Camera 1 right here, which is the new camera. Right here, this tab, this section right here. For the add object constraint, we want track to. And it simply asks, hey, what's your target? All right, so we just click on the eyedropper and we select the arcade unit. Okay, so now we want to see track 2. What it did is this. Let me go to number 7 here, top one. When I move it, look, it can't help itself. It kept looking at the arcade. Okay, it's like trap. Before, you couldn't do this. When you move it, kind of like this one, it just looks at wherever it's pointed at. Now that it has a constraint, it can't help itself. It just keeps looking at the arcade, which is kind of cool. However, how do we switch to this new camera? Because if you press 0 right now, it just keeps going back to the previous camera. Whenever you add a new camera, in order for that to make the active camera, the keyboard shortcut is Control 0. Okay, Control 0. So when you do Control 0, it switches to that. All right. So now with this, we can animate the camera in such a more kind of dynamic way, because we can now, if I press 0 right here, we can kind of do this movement. So we can have like a top, bottom going to the top kind of look. All right, so we can, so it looks like we're on a jib. All right, we're still using 50. We're still using default, right? All right, and let's start our animation. So let's start a little bit low, kind of like so. Oh, don't go to the floor. So it kind of shows the riser right here. Okay. Again, we ended the other one at frame 200, so we can just start this at 200 as if we were kind of stringing them together, right? Z-axis is our animation axis first, all right? So on frame 200, we animate wherever the Z-axis is, right? Right-click, insert single keyframe, all right? And then let's do another 200 frames. I'm going to go to 400 here, okay? And we'll move this up. Okay, kind of revealing that. All right, and then I'm going to keyframe Z. All right, and then let's see, it's doing that, and then we'll do the y-axis here. Let me just check what we can do at frame 400. All right, if I grab the y-axis right here. All right, that's kind of cool to show it like that, kind of passing. Oh, don't go in there, it will pivot. All right, so we're going to start at 200 on the y-axis, okay, with wherever it is, insert single keyframe, then we go all the way to 400, and we will right there, okay, maybe a little bit more till it starts flipping. All right, there, insert single keyframe. So let's watch it. All right. Okay, so now we can cut before that one. So we'll add another camera. I'm going to go to frame 400 here. I'm going to add another camera. All right, and we'll do Control 0 so that we see what that camera is looking at. All right, so there it is. Okay, and we will go to View, Camera to View, so that we can control it. We're going to switch this one to 85. So it's a little bit more for close-up and whatnot. Okay, so we want to do some kind of rotating kind of movement like so. Okay, however, we can't just use the arcade now because it has its center pivot point wherever it is to kind of track. So we're going to add an empty that we can track right here. Okay, so I'm going to go to the front. I'm going to add an empty. We're just going to go single arrow so we can see it, maybe. No, plain axis is fine. Okay, there it is. We're going to call this empty camera track object. All right, now we're going to position that right where the screen is, right here. Let's check on the side. All right, yeah, pretty much where we want it to be, right there. Okay, so when we grab now the other camera, the new one, the 85, which is camera 002. This is what it's looking at. Okay. We can add a constraint to this, very similar to the previous one. But this time, track 2, we're going to track that empty. All right. So we're now tracking that empty. This is what it looks like right here. Okay. So what I can do here is go to the top right here, and then we're just going to simply do the X. And it goes like close, kind of showing the screen. I do want to show a little bit of the Space Invader though. So maybe we'll go like this. All right. So that's from 400 to 600 is what we're going to animate. So X is what we're animating. And let me save this, by the way, in case I crash. And Arcade 1-up, animated camera. All right, X-axis, right-click at 400, insert single keyframe, and then we go 600 frames. Okay, so we're animating 200 frames on each one. X, we go, all right, kind of cool. Right there. Okay, then I'm just gonna right click that, insert single keyframe, and let's go watch it. All right, have we done from the top? I don't think we have done one from the top, right? Let me see, camera, this one, control 0. Oh, control 0 from that one. So let's, yeah, so this is from the bottom. So one more camera from the top and then a pullback. All right, so we finished the other one at frame 600. So I'm gonna put that at 600. You can put on 601 if you want, like really continuous one. We were editing this, right? We're gonna do some edits. So I'm gonna add another camera. I want this to be probably another 85, a little more closer focal length. And then I'm going to do control 0 to see what that camera is looking at. Okay, and then let's see. All right, the camera is so we can that one ended like that, I think. So we can go now kind of from the top. Okay, let's see. Something like this. Okay, we're going to track again the null right there. I mean the empty. Okay, there it is. So let me go to the side in wireframe mode. So there's my camera right there. So from 600. So let's just kind of do a okay, so we can do Y and then a Z to kind of show, and then finally a pullback. Pullback, and then we can just reverse our first render. So we can say, remember that when we got closer, we just reverse that. Okay, so that's what we're gonna do. So let me click undo. All right, right there. So we're gonna animate from 600. All right, so 600 Y axis first. Okay, and we go to 800. Yeah, there we go. All right, 800, we go like so. It's probably fine right there. Keyframe, go back to 600. We're going to be doing the Z-axis. So by the time we get to 800, we go all right, something like that. Single keyframe. All right, so now it goes like so, And then we go back to our first camera render. We simply reverse it, so it kind of shows, instead of it getting closer, it kind of do a pullback. All right. So let me check what that looks like. I don't want to do a jump cut. So this is our frame 200. Okay, so it can go there. And then we can probably, yeah, right here, we can do a dissolve, and then we'll, all right, I think that will do. Okay, so that concludes this part, and then the next part is we're going to stitch it together so we can watch the animation. Okay, so we're continuing, and we now have all our cameras, so let's start naming these. So I'm just going to call it cam 01 for the first one, cam 02, cam 03, cam 04. All right, and now we will, so they go from 1 to 200 and then so on and so forth, right? So it's fairly easy to do. We just need to make sure that we got those selected, and then we're going to put them by creating a marker, right? So I'm going to go to frame 1. I'm going to select the first camera. Okay, I'm going to go to frame 1 right there, and then I'm going to press M. Okay, M is in marker. All right, and then we go to frame 200. That's when the other one starts, right? So I'm going to press another marker right there. Okay, and then we go to 400. So these are basically just those starting keyframes of each camera, right? Press M for another marker. And then finally, frame 600, I'm going to press M. All right, so now, how do we kind of make Blender jump to those specific cameras? All right, so we have to do Command B or Control B for Blender to lock into those. So if I go to the first marker, which is frame 1, okay, you will need to make sure you're actually on the on that correct frame, not on before or after where you actually position your marker. Okay, you can't be one frame off. You have to be exactly where it's at, and you see right there, there's a marker. Okay, so if I go here and I select cam 1 and I do, and in the timeline, right, you have to be in the timeline right here, I do Command B. Okay, all right, or Control B. All right, and as you can see, it locks in camera 1. You see it? All right, so let's go to frame 200. Okay, I'm going to select camera 2. I'm going to move my cursor here in the timeline. I'm going to hover on top right there. Control B or Command B. All right, so I'm going to go to frame 400. Select camera 3. Command B. All right, and then finally camera 4, Command B or Control B. All right, so watch this now when we watch our camera. So from camera 1, it automatically switch to the new camera or to the other cameras, and you have this one continuous playback. All right, and next is we render this. All right, so to render this one, we have all the way to frame 800. Okay, so all the way to frame 800, I can now start setting up my render. All right, so let's take care of that. So now it will know that it will just keep rendering without you switching. It just it understands that this is the length of the render. Okay, so let's set up our render. All right, so let's set up our render. So this is 800 frames. So let's go to the first tab right here. So we're doing this in EV for performance. Should do it fairly quick depending on the resolution, and the quality is, you know, for the type of render we want to, should work. All right, so make sure that I set up my render for 256 samples. Depending on your computer right here, you can set this to 100, 200. You know, it all depends on how much grain or noise you're getting. All right. I also check viewport denoising right here, since we're not rendering in passes. We're just rendering as a whole frame, and we're not doing any compositing. Basically, what we get right here is what we see is what we're going to get. Okay. These are the important ones to put here: ambient occlusion, bloom, and then screen space reflection should be checked. I just leave this all as default. Probably bloom is the only thing you would want to tinker depending on how much intensity you apply. You get that post effects of a glow right there, and then the rest we'll just leave them as is. Shadow, maybe put a check mark on high bit depth right here. Soft shadow, double your pixel rest on the shadow if you want to, but that's totally up to you if your computer can handle it. All right, we're gonna add one more thing here before we finish the render. So I want to make sure here that depth of field, max size of 100, we'll leave that, and that's the last thing we're going to do. Right, we're going to add that before we click render. But if your computer can't handle depth of field effects, you're going to want to skip the portion of the lesson after we set up the render. Okay, the reason for that is depth of field kind of creates that a little bit of creative what do you call this, flair to your render, where you can isolate what is sharp and what should be blurred, so on and so forth. So it has a nice look to it if you prefer that look, or if you want to prefer shooting in flat. Keep in mind we're mostly shooting in 50mm. 85 probably is the one that will create depth of field in real world scenario. 50 would do it too, depending on how big your aperture is, so on and so forth. Okay, so those things should be checked. All right, render, totally up to you. You can just leave it all default. I think it's 64 default, and then if you're not happy with the quality, you can bump that up. All right, so the next step after we change this to EV, some of the shadows right here. Okay, we're going to go to the tab below it. This is the size of your render. So if you do want to render this in 4K, you can simply change your number here. Okay, 3840 by 2160. Okay, you can also multiply this by 2. Okay, when you press enter, it does the number for you. Okay, 1080 asterisk 2. All right, percent right here is like, if I put this at 50%, that means I want to render half this resolution, 100 all the way. All right. Aspect, leave everything 1:1. Frame start, end start. This is what matters right here. It's which part of the timeline you're rendering. Since we stringed all our cameras together, you can just go all the way 1 to 800, and it will just carry on. Okay. Step 1, we're not doubling any frames. We're also filming in 24 frames per second. Okay, so this is the setting for it. Now this one right here would be the output. So I call this one, well, let's actually make a new folder here. Okay, I'm gonna create a new folder just for the sake of, so this is the test render folder. So this is my dumping ground for everything that's, okay, so test render folder. Then I can give it a name right here, so I can just call it arcade, and then Blender will generate the appending number. Okay, 001 all the way to 800 and whatnot. Okay, so this is what I'm gonna call it. As you can see right here, it went inside that folder, and that will be the name of each file name. All right, file format, we're not gonna do video. that's only for like tests and whatnot. So let's kind of simplify this. Let's just go with PNG. Okay, no compression, 8-bit. Okay, and we're just going to leave this as default. All right, so you're going to get an image sequence. You're going to get 800 PNG files. That's what it is. So the beauty of that is you crash halfway, you keep what you have. If you change that to video, then it goes kaput, or you can find it in your cache file, and you know, it's a little bit more hunting. Okay, so and this one, the PNG will be if you use programs like DaVinci Resolve, they'll just go and be put together as a sequence. You're not going to see them as a single file, not unless you tell your video editing software how to actually see them. All right, as far as setting up the render, that's all there is to it. And then what you need to do then is go to render right here, render animation, or save your file first, because if you do crash and then you did not leave all this as you know, you didn't save it, then you're going to have to input this again. All right, so if you're not going to put depth of field to the camera, and this is it, so all you have to do is click render, render animation, then it will run the rendering engine Eevee. You'll produce 800 sequential files that are PNG. And keep in mind, this is 4K, or for the lawyer's sake, it's Ultra HD. Okay, so all right, so that's that. And then you can end the lesson here if you don't want to apply depth of field. All right, for those who want to apply depth of field, keep watching. All right, so let's see the cameras that we can apply depth of field. Probably this one right here. All right, so let's say we want, well, probably not on this one, because we start over here. I don't want it to blur. Maybe this camera here. Okay, like we just want the screen to be the one that's kind of sharp. We can want to do some kind of selective focusing and whatnot. So that starts with, this will be camera 3, so I'm going to be selecting camera 3. Okay, and we'll be switching to modeling right here, where we could see that. So I'm going to press 0 right there. Okay, and then let's turn on Eevee. Let's do depth of field, so I'm going to turn it on. I have camera 3 selected. Okay, by doing that, you can already tell that, watch this one right here, when I turn it on, it gets blurred. Okay, so it's basically asking, hey, what do you want to focus right here, right? So I don't have a specific one that can be the depth of field within the arcade. However, we do have this empty that's fairly close. All right, maybe that's not close enough. Let me move it. Want it on the screen right there. So that's the one that it'll be kind of focusing on. All right, let's see how that works. Okay, so go to the camera, select the camera. Depth of field is on, so which one do you want to focus on? So click on the eyedropper and click on this empty. All right, so the camera track object, remember that one? That's the one we're pivoting on the camera and whatnot. All right, so now we're seeing a little bit of it, but our aperture, blender speak, 2.8, it's still pretty small, so we're gonna scale this down. Okay, we're talking low number here. All right, okay, 0.1, maybe that's way too low. So we're gonna increase that a bit. Hopefully I don't crash here. Okay, right there, probably, maybe one more. Okay, should have restarted the computer. It's probably running out of memory. Let me just input the number. I'm gonna go with 0.5. There we go. All right, so let's turn it on and off. Okay, so it's giving a little bit of it. Oh, maybe let's lower that by 0.4. I'm also gonna increase the number of blades. So everything that you do here does affect your render. Okay, so the number of blades, basically this is your shutter right here. The more number here, the softer the blurring's supposed to be. All right, so if you have bokeh or whatnot, or those bokeh balls, I'm just gonna follow my lens blade on my Hasselblad here. I'm gonna go with 9 blades. Again, it affects your render, so that's why if you try this once and your computer's struggling, just abandon ship, right? Okay, that should be it for this camera. All right, so just remember the number 0.4, and we got 9 blades, so we're just going to repeat that for the other cameras. So camera 4. All right, so camera 4, I'm just going to go Control 0 to make that the active one. All right, so let's see if we can put that depth of field on this one. Let's play it here. Let me go to my animation here so I could see where that point in time is. All right, so 600, and then we go like this. All right, so let's just kind of preview it right here, how it's blurring those. Okay, kind of like that. 731. All right, so let's go here and camera 4, turn on depth of field. We know this is the object that we want to target. Camera track object. Blades we put 9. Okay, this one we went 0.4. And let's see. Okay, there you go. It blurred it, and it's still sharp here on the screen. Okay, so that should do it. If we hopefully we can preview the animation here and without it affecting it too much because the screen is smaller. Let's just see here how the depth of field is affected. All right, so there's some pausing there. Definitely we need to edit the render after, because you gotta have a smooth flow. All right, I see a little bit of it. The marquee is definitely blurred a bit. Okay, and right here, definitely the screen is sharp, and we get some of that, and then we go back. We'll probably dissolve to the first shot, but reverse it. Okay, and that's it. So I'm gonna save this one. And I'm going to render this, render animation right here for those, and then we'll have another lesson just on DaVinci Resolve, how to kind of put this together, get some music from YouTube Studio, so on and so forth. But if I hit that render animation, it'll get going, and then no need to show you that in real time because it'll be a while, and we'll just show you the final render after. And here's the render. I finished all the way to close to 700. I have to stop it since I do have to upload this video. But let me just show you here in Finder that these are 25 megabytes per frame. And I'm moving my mouse my arrow keys right now just to kind of show you one at a time each render. Okay, and then here I'm just tapping the spacebar, and as you can see here, this is the camera movement. If I go past 200 right there, it switches to the other camera. If I go to 400 here, from this one it switches then to this camera right here, so on and so forth. And then we'll have a video on how to kind of put this together in DaVinci Resolve if you plan to add sound, maybe some titles, so on and so forth. All right, and there you have it. So I rendered all the way till it's about 2 minutes a frame, 691 right there. I'll just pick it up, but for the sake of finishing this video and having it uploaded, we're ending this video right here.